Matt in Durham, North Carolina, listening to WCHL. Hey, Matt, you had some thoughts on this?
Yeah. Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just calling up. I'm a conservative up front. I like your show because you're thoughtful and and have a good perspective from the other side of things. I was just calling to say I don't think contractually it doesn't sound like Nick has a lot to stand on, just because from what you said, the agreement sounds like that they had indicated that both parties had to consent.
Well, here's the basis of his argument. California law requires that when you sign an agreement, it's not a prenup, whatever it is. Okay, we now have fertilized embryos agreement, and how are they going to be used or disposed of? When you sign that agreement, there has to be a clause in there that specifies what will happen to those embryos in the event that the couple breaks up if they divorce. And that clause was not in the agreement that they signed. So he's asserting, or his lawyers are asserting, that under California law, that agreement is not a legal agreement because it doesn't conform to California law. Therefore, we can throw it out. And therefore, he can lay claim to part of her body, her eggs. And I think this becomes an issue of a woman's right to control her own body, or her own offspring, or whatever you want to call it.
The argument from what I understand, the traditional argument for abortion has been that the woman's right to live her life as it is, including controlling her own body, trumps the future like ours life of the fetus
until the point of viability.
Okay, and that's somewhere, what is it, 20 to 24 weeks? That's kind of the
I think that's when I think by and large that's where science defined it. I don't remember when the third trimester begins, but the Supreme Court established this third trimester. They basically wrote a law, which they're not supposed to do, but they did in Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, and I think morally, Nick's argument, what I would come down in favor of him also, is that now, this embryo is very much outside of her body, and so now I think the danger lies in labeling that as property. And of course, I don't have any South Park visions of infanticide or a 57th trimester abortion, but I think once the embryo is outside the woman's body, it becomes a different discussion. Of course, viability, even a fetus at 24 weeks isn't viable to be left on its own. It still has to be cared for, incubated, fed through
But we're not talking about a fetus here. We're talking about, two cells, right? An egg and a sperm that have combined.
Technically, I guess it's really a zygote then, not necessarily even a fetus. But
yeah, it's definitely not a fetus. I'm not even sure it's a zygote. I think it might be a fertilized embryo. Or is that the definition of a zygote? I thought a zygote became a zygote after it reached like 128 cells or something.
Yeah, I'll dig out my 10th grade biology textbook and get back to you.
It's been a while, for me too.
Yeah, the idea is I think the word viability now, especially with the technology that we have, viability can be stretched in either direction.
Right, but this is potential. This is potential, and this has been the Catholic Church's position. This is why the Catholic Church opposes the use of condoms, because their assertion is that
every sperm is sacred.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, that if you intend to have sex, you must intend to have babies, and that's the point of sex. And I would suggest that, the Catholic Church is wrong on that. A lot of people have sex for pleasure. And if the only reason to have sex is to have babies, then what? When women reach menopause, they're supposed to stop having sex? That makes no sense at all. And secondly, the Catholic Church can have doctrine all day long, and they can practice it inside their churches, but that doesn't make it the law of the United States of America.
Oh no, and I'm not arguing. I'm a Christian, but I'm not arguing necessarily from the Catholic doctrine. I'm speaking from Nick's standpoint of having a vested interest in this embryo as much as Sophia. Is it Sophia Vergara?
Yeah, something like that. So Vergara.
Now that the embryo is outside of her body and it's comprised of 23 of his chromosomes and 23 of her chromosomes, that she, I don't think, has the moral trump card of having the baby grow inside of her body now and have.
Well, it's going to grow inside a surrogate, but it's still, how can this not be her property? We even in a divorce with living children, the determinations of their future are made in courts in using procedures that are very similar to those that are determined, who gets the couch, who gets the dog, who gets the kid.
Well, if property is the issue, then does does Nick also have a stake in this, or just because we produce so many more sperm than they produce eggs, that it's a rarity issue, and so it's more her property than his?
Well, I think you could make a strong case for that, Matt. I think you could make a very strong case for that.
Saying. I think if there's no bodily changes being made to Sophia, that it's just an embryo, and now both of them have a vested half and half interest in having this.
Well,
created.
but see, she went through hell for this. I mean, women, when you do in vitro, you've got to take all kinds of hormones to jack up the eggs, and then they stick needles in you and extract. I mean, she went through a lot for this. And just because they're outside her body doesn't mean that she doesn't have a lot invested in this. So, Matt, I got to move along. I would love to hear from some women on this too.